maybe we can cut the spotlight, and if you turn on the lights, yeah, just Chris, if you could just turn on the lights back there. Great. So we have 2 mics. So, yeah, so to kick this off, I think it'd be great if you could do like a 1-minute intro, and then we'll go through a quick panel. So we're in China, we're in Shanghai. It's the fastest moving market in the world, and we're going to talk a little bit about change and the changes that we're seeing both in tech and in investment. So Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Jeff Chi, Vice Chair of Vickers Venture Partners. We are an early stage venture fund and now investing globally. We started as a Pan-Asian fund, but recently decided to take things global. So we're typical Series A, Series B investors. We sometimes do get involved in late stage angel rounds, but I can talk a little bit more later.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicolas Ducray. I'm a partner at Cathay Capital. So I take care of the investment in China of the Sino-French Innovation Fund, which is a 300 million euro fund that invests in China, in France, and in the US. We typically invest at a Series A or Series B, ticket size in a range of $10 million. We actually, we are the VC arm of a Cathay Capital group, which is a PE VC group with 2 billion euro under management, and a group that manages the Sino-French funds. So with key investors being BPI France, the French sovereign fund, and in China Development Bank.
Hi, this is Melody. I'm with Artesian Capital, and we set up our Shanghai office back in 2011. So that's almost a little bit after the Chinaccelerator opened here, and we've focused on the very early stage from the seed angel round to follow up invest into the Series A round.
Yeah, so everybody talks about China VC. The last numbers I have are 2015, where the U.S. total VC was around 72 billion. Europe combined was 12 billion, and China, well, numbers in China, but China was somewhere around 50 to 60 billion invested. Now, most of that money is focused on local, most of it's on renminbi, but all 3 of the VCs we have with us here today are global or increasingly global. So Chinaccelerator, we're focused on cross-border, and more VCs are focused on global, not just local. So change is something that we see every day. You just have to look out the window. So I'd like to kick off by asking, give us an example of a change that you've seen recently, whether it's be in investment or tech, or companies, and how a startup is changing. So Jeff?
So a lot really has happened in China Venture. I've been investing in this market since 2005. I've moved here in 2006, and we've seen quite a bit of change. It used to be a predominantly US dollar market, as William just said. It is now more RMB than dollars, but the dollar side of investing is still very active. Vickers, by the way, has both RMB and dollars. The flavor, if you may, keeps changing. If I were to just highlight, I think a couple of them. I think on the dimension of exits, and this is the reason why the market in 2005, 2006 was predominantly dollars, because U.S. IPOs was the only avenue for exits. In recent years, the local RMB listing on the local exchanges has become more dominant, and that's why in the past few years you've seen privatization of even U.S. listed companies, Chinese companies listed in the U.S., privatized and relisting on the market here. The interesting thing is, in the last 6 months or so, we've begun to see a whole slew of reheating up of the U.S. IPO market happening, and so we live in interesting times. The other change that I would talk a little bit about, I think, is the time and age for the Me Too concept of taking U.S. type of companies just copying them or innovating behind the similar concepts and creating a Chinese version of it is I think, gone. I think the low-hanging fruit of going after consumer internet plays is becoming harder and harder to find. And as a result, companies and investors need to look, and which is a strategy that we're taking, look deeper and deeper into tech. So technology as a competitive advantage and having very deep technology is becoming increasingly important. The government recognizes this. They are putting a lot of emphasis on, one of the things that Xi Jinping has come out to say is that China will be, not try to be or aspire to be, but will be a global leader in artificial intelligence by 2020. So the government has very bold ambitions for technology as well, and certainly a direction that we're heading in.
So what struck me recently is really the commitment and the involvement of the government in technology. The amount of liquidity that the government is injecting into entrepreneurship, into supporting entrepreneurship and the creation of enterprises. I think at the end of last year, cumulative amount was in a range of $350 billion to be invested in innovation in China. And with the ultimate goal is to create Chinese technologies, Chinese indigenous technologies that can go global and that can go after the global markets. And that means that artificial intelligence is one of the examples where the government not only promotes and support players, but actually itself invests in some of the top companies. If you look at the FaceDiadia or the SenseTime of the world, all the latest round, that were all massive rounds, were actually with some government involvement as well. So that's really a brand new context in which we have to work, and we have to work more closely actually in accordance with the government priorities and in directions of what the government would like to achieve in terms of technology development for China.
Yeah. So from my personal experience, if like 5 years ago, some entrepreneurs talked to me, they were said, oh, my business model is inspired by some model back in US or in Europe, or maybe this model has been proven there. But for now, I think the entrepreneurs are more confident with their technology and also the local market. They try to develop the business model based on the technology and also the demands of the local market and try to build their own business, and then maybe even try to copy it to some other markets after China. So that's the biggest change I've seen from the technology side. And from the investment side, I think the local funds here are more rational now. They are more diversified in the form of the investment, in the phrase, and in different places. They are looking to more cross-border cases as well. Yeah.
So the startups that we invest in, I mean, if they screw something up, they pivot. They change. They're constantly evolving. But what about VC? VC hasn't really changed all that much. For SOSV, we're trying to growth hack VC because we invest through accelerators. Now we have the rise of ICOs, maybe not so much in China, but everybody just goes to Hong Kong and they use WeChat now. So how do you see VCs reinventing themselves? How do you think how are you personally reinventing yourself and your fund as this market actually starts to change? And are we all dinosaurs sitting up here, the frog in the warming water, and we're dead, we just don't know it yet?
I think the first one is we talk a little bit about Chinaccelerator focuses on cross-border deals. I think the first thing we think about this is globalization, and as I mentioned earlier, as a firm, we're beginning to sort of move away from consumer internet plays where you focus on acquiring users cheaply and being able to monetize more than you acquire them for. and increasingly the monetization is becoming more difficult, and the cost of acquisition is increasing, and those plays are becoming harder and harder to find. And therefore, if you move to technology as a competitive advantage and start investing into technology, there is a real need to in a way upgrade ourselves, right? So along a few dimensions. One is, how do we understand the technology, right? Do we need people on board that has a deeper understanding for technology than before, rather than just generalists understanding how the market works? We start needing to have people who have a deeper understanding for technology. Hence, the need to hire, some PhDs on the team, some research folks on the team, and so forth. And then technology itself is a global play. Innovation is a global phenomenon. You can't really say that I'm investing in the best AI technology because it's here in China or because it's there in Toronto, and all that. You really need to have an eye in many places, which is why as a firm we're beginning to start becoming more global and to be able to have a viewpoint as to how similar technologies are developing across the world. With regards to business model, now this is my personal view, right? Venture's been around for quite a while now. And we've been talking about sort of new business ideas that sort of would considerably replace the venture model for quite a while now. Ever since incubators and accelerators came onto the scene, they were saying it was maybe ventures over, right? The 2 and 20, meaning the management fee and the carry model doesn't quite work. But if you sort of drill down into it, it's still a model that works, and the cost structure for what we bring to investors is still a very viable model. So ICOs, I think, are here to stay. I don't think they'll replace venture. I think they fulfill a slightly different role, as well as accelerators and all that. So I don't think that the threat of ICOs is really going to kill. I said this in another forum recently, right? If you're a company and thinking about an ICO, if you've got a good case, I would encourage companies to do that. If you're an investor thinking about putting money behind an ICO, I'd be very careful and very cautious about putting money because there's very little regulation to protect the investor.
So, in terms of the evolution of the role of the VC, actually we're trying to. We've been building a model that we think is quite new. So leveraging our global platform, with offices in Silicon Valley, in Europe, and in China, and with a clear mandate of supporting companies globally, on the one hand, and on the other hand, by having some LPs that are actually corporates that are today facing digital disruption, who see the industry lines disappearing, who see actually a lot of changing happening because and thanks to startups. So by having these corporates as investors in our fund, we can actually help them better work with startups, better understand what's happening in their ecosystem, and in the meantime, also help startups work with corporates. So we operate actually in 2 dimensions. So of course we are financially focused. We invest to make money for our investors, but also we provide a lot of value to companies by helping them, if not go international, but at least to understand what's happening in other regions of the world. And we also help our corporate LPs in working with startups, understand the disruption coming from startup innovation around the world. So of course that gives us a lot of other things to do on the top of doing investments and to support the portfolio. But that's also a lot of value we believe we can create by doing these 2 things.
I think for the Chinese market, we need to remember 2 things. One is China is a really different market. It's you cannot refer it to any other market in the world. It's so different. The second thing is that it changes very fast. So for us, as a VC, we just fit into this very different market and also keep up with the changes of it every day. And for the ICO or the other possibilities, I think ICO just lower the barriers of very early stage investment from maybe individuals or maybe the co-investment from different venture capitals. And it's a good thing, but there is still certain paths through to decide on investment, and the individuals have to take their own risk upon their investment. So after all, it will be something similar.
So every single VC panel you ever see, they're like, oh, what do you look for? And everybody's like, oh, team is very important. And obviously, team is very important. It's possibly the most important thing. But what the hell does that actually mean? So it would be great if you could, have a little feel-good moment here. And if you could give an example of, amazing team and something that they did that was amazing, hopefully from one of your portfolio companies, amazing, surprising, that illustrates, the power of the team and how important that teamwork is. For Chinaccelerator, we only invest in teams. When statistically, we have over 700 companies in our portfolio, and single co-founders generally don't do very well. So it's all about teams. So if you could just give an example, short story about one of your amazing teams and what makes them amazing.
Well, before I go any further, I wanted to take the opportunity to, and this is just buying time, so I'm thinking about the story. But I really wanted to take the chance to congratulate all the companies out there who are going to be presenting here today, and I understand that they've put in a lot of work and effort in preparing for this demo day. So really, I've had the privilege of meeting some of you already. So really, congratulations for coming so far, and thank you for all your effort. But really, in terms of I think one of the aspects, there's a lot of things that we look for when we say team, and this ranges from integrity, capabilities, passion, drive. Those are just some of the attributes that we look for. But a lot of it is really just being able to connect, and whether or not we're able to connect with them as individuals. We see our portfolio companies as partners. And it's not, you can say it's not a short-term partnership, right? Because we take a 5-year, 7-year view on companies that we invest in, and so we're going to be partners with this guy or these people for the next 5 years. And if we don't like working with each other, that's a recipe for disaster. So I think the likability, the can we connect, are we able to have a decent conversations and get messages across to each other? Is there a level of mutual trust that we have with these companies? And those are just important attributes.
So to be fair, since we invest at A or B round, we usually come across companies and teams that have already some experience, because they already achieve going to the second round of investment, for example. But I'd like to take one example of a team that really impresses me, that has impressed me since the beginning, and which I think is going to do very, very good. It's the founding team of the Pinduoduo, which is a social commerce company, probably the fastest growing company in e-commerce ever seen anywhere in the world. And the idea of this concept, which is basically creating ad hoc groups on WeChat to buy products with a discount in a very, very low friction way, came from the two past experience of the founder, Colin. So he was a serial entrepreneur. His first business was a mobile game company, and his second business was a Taobao partner company. And he came across the idea of his new concept by merging the two previous concepts of these two previous companies. And of course, took two concepts that have nothing to do with each other, mobile gaming and e-commerce operation. And so he basically reimagined completely e-commerce by gamify it and making it social. And this became Pinduoduo, which is probably one of the very, very interesting companies coming out of China today. When by observing Colin and his team, the capability to innovate with such a concept and to execute on the idea, was a very, very fulfilling experience for all of us at Cathay.
Okay, I'm gonna give an example of a company we've looked at, and basically it's doing something that is not that exciting. They are doing the employee benefit good for the companies, and these local companies will have the labor union who will have certain budget to pay for this, and they are trying to provide the service and products to these big companies. When we talk with them at the first time, they are in a certain range of revenue, but kind of confused how they are gonna expand their business. They are thinking of maybe through internet, through some very new concept. But after all, we sit down, talk with them, with the team, and find out that what their strength is. Their strength is the sales team. The entrepreneur was originally from Focus Media, and he has a team that is very strong in the sales. So we find that that's their strongest point, and if they are just focus on this, and at this point is actually very fitting for their business, for these selling to these clients. So we just discuss with them and decide to focus on this to develop their sales team, and to so now I think it's after 2 years, their revenue just triple and triple for after every year. So that's very impressive, since they're not started from very small amount of revenue. So that's very impressive for us.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we're a big fan of boring businesses that makes lots of money too. We've got a couple of them here for you today. So thank you very much, guys. You know, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you very much for investing in our companies. Jeff, we're waiting for you. But thanks. So we're going to kick it off. And thanks for being a part of the SOSV China Accelerator family.